and relevant questions concerning events which took place before 9/11 that have been glossed over, misrepresented, or ignored by the government and media. Point number 1. In 1979, the CIA initiated a massive program of covert military aid to indigenous Islamic tribes in Afghanistan and Islamic volunteers from other nations who were in opposition to the Russian military invasion of that country. The Russians had formed a coalition with several Afghani tribes from the north of that country, which are referred to as the Northern Alliance. The tribes supported by the CIA were called the Mujahideen by the Western press. Ronald Reagan in 1986 euphemistically referred to the Mujahideen as the freedom fighters of Central Asia. Elements within the Mujahideen later branched off to become Al-Qaeda, again with full CIA support and funding. Point 2. The leader of Al-Qaeda is a Saudi Arabian who had been educated in Europe, whose name is Osama Bin Laden. Osama Bin Laden's father was Sheikh Mohammed Bin Laden, who founded and built Bin Laden Brothers Construction Company. Later, this company was renamed the Saudi Bin Laden Group. It should also be noted that from the early 1980s, Osama Bin Laden was a CIA asset whose Western cover name was Tim Osman. Point 3. The Bin Laden family is one of the wealthiest in Saudi Arabia and has been instrumental in building dozens of American military bases in the Middle East. The Bin Laden family is closely connected with the ruling sheiks of Saudi Arabia and has strong political and personal connections around the world. Point 4. The Bin Laden family and the Bush families have been friends and business partners for many years. In 1977, George Bush Jr. started Arbusto Energy Company in Midland, Texas. One of his first and major investors was Salim bin Laden, who at that time had become the president of the Saudi bin Laden Group. Salim happened to be the older brother of Osama bin Laden. Another interesting connection is Sheikh Khalid bin Mahfouz. Mahfouz is one of the richest men in the world and was also a major investor in Arbusto Energy Company. Further, he was operational director of the corrupt BCCI between 1986 and 1990. According to CIA Director James Woolsey in testimony to the U.S. Senate in 1998, Mahfouz was a major contributor to Osama and Al-Qaeda. Oh, one more little detail. Mahfouz's sister is Osama bin Laden's wife. It's like one big happy family. Point 5. Al-Qaeda was involved in the bombing of the United States embassies, which killed 35 Americans and 150 locals in 1992. Al-Qaeda was also partially responsible for the suicide bombing of the USS Cole, which killed 25 American sailors in 1996. Point 6. Both Yemen and Sudan offered to extradite Osama bin Laden after the bombings of the embassies and the USS Cole. However, Secretary of State Madeleine Albright, who was appointed by Bill Clinton, refused to take bin Laden. Point 7. John O'Neill was a deputy director of the FBI and resigned his post in disgust because of interference from both the Clinton and Bush administrations in the investigation of Al-Qaeda. He allegedly said this:
"The main obstacles to investigate Islamic terrorism were U.S. oil corporate interest."
Mr. O'Neill had the misfortune to be hired as the director of security at the World Trade Center starting on 9/11/01. He was killed on that day in the World Trade Center bombing. Point 8. European newspapers have widely reported that Osama bin Laden was sick with a kidney malfunction and went to an American hospital in Dubai in January of 2001. While there, he met with the CIA's section chief. These accusations are extremely serious because this is after the bombings of both the American embassies and the USS Cole that were tied to bin Laden. Point 9. Intelligent people from around the world laugh at the mere idea that Bin Laden could orchestrate the complex hijackings of 4 commercial airliners that took off from 3 different airports from a cave in the mountains of Afghanistan, 12,000 miles away? Point 10. In October of 1993, there was a car bombing of the World Trade Center. The bombing was not successful in bringing the building down because the car was parked too far away from the interior columns. Unfortunately, 34 people were killed. The bomber was a 43-year-old Egyptian, Imad Salim. According to stories from the New York Times, Salim was paid $1 million and was trained by the FBI to perform this reprehensible act. Salim figured out that he was being set up to be the patsy and taped John Antisev. Antisev, a top American FBI agent, told Salim to proceed with the bombing. The media is strangely quiet about this act of treason from within. This is incredible. Few people are aware that there was an attempt to blow up the Alfred P. Murrah building in Oklahoma City in 1985, 10 years before the last incident. The New American magazine has done a wonderful job of investigating and reporting about this group that initially tried to blow up the building and who live in Elohim City, Oklahoma. Many independent investigators believe this same rogue group was involved in the 1995 bombing and may have had support from elements within the FBI. It is said that
a thief always returns to the scene of the crime.
Could it be that units within the government have come back to finish their unfinished work at the World Trade Center, as it appears they did in Oklahoma City? Point 11. The United States government spends a minimum of $40 billion of our tax money a year on the FBI, CIA, and NSA. These agencies were responsible for helping start and finance al-Qaeda and have been closely monitoring the Taliban, Bin Laden, and al-Qaeda for the past decade. Yet all of these agencies, with all their money and all their technology, flatly deny they had prior knowledge that there would be such an attack. Hogwash. After the assault, these agencies were actually rewarded with significant increases in funding and were lauded by the administration and the press. This is sick stuff. Point 12. In the week before 9/11, there was an increase of 1,200% in trading activity of orders to go short on the stocks of American Airlines and United Airlines, as reported by the Chicago Securities Exchange. An investor goes short when he expects the stock to decrease in value. Tens of millions of dollars were made by those who appear to have had forewarning of this event. According to the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, and the London Independent, a high percentage of this activity came from one investment firm, Deutsche Bank and A.B. Brown. The principal manager of this firm until 1998 is now the director of the CIA. There has still been no official investigation. Point 13. According to Reuters News Service, 2 of the terrorists went to a topless bar a few nights before the attack. While at the bar, they were supposedly obnoxious, had lots of drinks, and each spent over $200 for lap dances. The story goes on to say they talked about how America was going to suffer and conveniently left business cards. Oh, one more thing. Being faithful Muslims, they also left a Holy Koran. Sure. The spin doctors must have been drunk when they came up with this story. They want us to believe fundamental Muslims who are going to give their lives for Allah would go to a strip bar, get drunk, which is against Islamic law, tell the world what they're going to do, and then leave their business cards and a Quran. The only thing more amazing than this story is that most Americans seem to believe it. Point 14. On the day of the attack, a couple in Jersey City, New Jersey, reported that they saw a group of men on top of an adjoining building filming the first jet hit the North Tower and cheering. They assumed that these men were Arab terrorists and called the police. The police caught these men, but they were not Arabs. They were Israelis, here in the United States without legal permits. They worked for a moving company that, according to Forward Magazine, a local Jewish publication, has possible ties with the Mossad. Who were these men who had prior knowledge? Why was this story suppressed? And why did our government allow them to return to Israel?